Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight. We have quite an inspiring story to share with you this evening. My name is Carmen David. I'm an aortic dissection survivor and an aortic athlete.
And my name is Jack Crow, and I am an aortic dissection survivor, and I'm an aortic athlete. Carmen, you just got back from London.
I
Who goes
did.
to London in January? Why would you go there?
My crazy friends. So they wanted to walk it was called the London Winter Walk. And it is a strictly walking event, but it had all the distances and they chose to do the marathon. So we walked a marathon all throughout the Thames River in London and it was fine. I mean, it was very different. They had lots of immense amount of food. I just didn't understand. I've never seen an event like that, let alone strictly walking. But it was great to hang out with them. And I got to celebrate at the end with the founder of the Aortic Dissection Charitable Trust. Her husband actually walked it with us the whole day. And then we met her in the evening and had a really good catch up time at a pub. So that was pretty awesome.
And your training for this walking marathon was?
I didn't. I mean, I'm active enough, but I didn't technically train for it. I think I only did about 2 5.5 mile hikes with my dog in the last couple of months. So maybe I wouldn't advise to do that, but I thought if I can walk that distance at their pace. They said it's not Carmen pace, it was their pace. So I thought, well, I can probably do this. So it was good celebrating. But I hear you have something to celebrate right now.
Well, on Tuesday, it was my fourth aortiversary. So
Yeah.
January 28th, 2021, at a campfire in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, I dissected at 4.3 centimeters and out of the blue, had no idea. And here I am 4 years later doing fun things with aortic athletes and able to do some interesting exercise stuff. So I'm a lucky guy after all, don't you think?
Yes, very much
Very
so.
lucky.
And we have such a special guest here. But before we get to that, I want to tell everybody, please click like down below so that this video gets shared with all of our aortic athletes, friends, ultra friends, others. And also remember to join us on Facebook, Aortic Athletes. Remember our motto, don't quit, adapt. And also join Aortic Hope. Aortic Hope provides this great platform. There are friends and partners, and these are two great places where you can go for support, one for exercise and one for all your other one-stop shopping for all your other aortic needs. So please join us.
Awesome. And we do want to remind everybody, we are going to be talking about ultra marathons today, but this is not something that we're advising anyone else with aortic disease to do. We are just sharing a very inspiring story with you today. We're all on our unique journey in our with aortic disease, and we want to make sure that any exercise program that you're starting, that you discuss it with your cardiologist.
Right. And remember, whether you're an aortic athlete or not, nobody just runs a marathon. Nobody just runs an ultra. I have a funny feeling we're going to find out from our guest tonight that there was a long history of getting ready for this. Sometimes I think our motto at Aortic Athletes should be little by little by little. So wherever you are in your aortic journey, it may be after this video going out for a walk on the beach. It may be going out for a little jog. Start wherever you are, and whatever exercise you do is good. It's going to enhance your life experience as long as you don't spike your blood pressure by doing crazy things like a Valsalva maneuver. So we want everybody, as Carmen said, make sure you check with your cardiologist. We're going to talk ultras. We're going to talk marathons and other things. We're not saying that anyone with aortic disease should do this. In fact, you shouldn't, unless you're in a special category like Michael LoPresti.
Yeah, so welcome to our guest today, aortic athlete Michael LoPresti. Hi, Michael. How are you?
Hi, Carmen. Hi, Jack. I am great. How are you both?
We're good. We want to congratulate you on this, what most people would find just crazy 377-mile ultra that you ran over 6-day period. I mean, I can't even fathom.
It was an amazing experience. It was in some ways a culmination of a couple of decades of running ultras and a race I had been eyeing for a long time. So things conspired to let me participate this year, and it was just an amazing experience. Amazing experience.
Awesome. Well, before we dive into this one specifically, you just touched a little bit that you had the prior been a prior ultra runner, but tell us a little bit more about yourself and that journey.
Sure. So I live in Connecticut, and probably started running seriously in my early to mid 20s. I was married. I wasn't very active. I was starting to gain some weight, and wasn't feeling very good about that. So I started jogging a few days a week. My father had always been a runner, and at some point he ran the Hartford Marathon in Hartford, Connecticut. And around there, that was a good inspirational trigger to really help me realize I could be doing more with my own health, my own body, my own running. And I think my long distance running journey started from there. So my first marathon was in, I think it was 2000 up in Burlington, Vermont. It took me about a little under 5 hours to finish that. And I think that when you finish a marathon, I think there's two types of people. There's the person who says, okay, I've checked that off my list. What's next? Then there's a person who says, okay, when's my next marathon? I was definitely the latter. I was hooked after that first one. And that was probably 25 years or so ago. And I've completed, I think it's 127 marathons and ultras since then. So it's been an amazing journey.
Wait a minute. You've done 127 ultras and marathons.
Yes.
Okay. And and is it true is it true you also live by the Appalachia Trail?
Yeah, we moved here about 5 years ago, and we're about half an hour from a few of the trailheads of the Appalachian Trail. Yes, which will be my retirement gift to myself at some point in the future.
Let's do it together. That's something I'd like to do too.
Absolutely.
You're probably faster. So you were doing 3-4 events a year then?
Yeah, some years even more than that. Yeah, some years if the scheduling works out, 10, 11, 12 marathons, ultras a year. Yeah, it wasn't always that way. Kind of, as my heart journey kind of evolved and we learned more, some years were fewer races, some years were more. But yeah, there's been some years it's 3, 4, 5 weekends in a row of these things.
My sense is, as I call myself a retired Ironman, is that the ultra community is a lot more chill and a lot less about the hoo-ha and the adrenaline. Is that true?
Probably to a degree. Yeah, I mean, we like a little bit of hoopla, but generally speaking, yeah, it's a smaller community. A lot of times you'll find you just show up in the woods. There's a table with a couple of jugs of water. That's your big aid station. Yeah, it's a bit of a smaller affair in a lot of cases. But I do enjoy the big city marathons too. I mean, some of my favorite marathons have been like the Disney Marathon, Hartford Marathon. I mentioned that. I've done Marine Corps Marathon a few times, but I've also done 100 miles in the woods. It runs the gamut of experiences.
Wow. Well, I was so when did you first discover that you had a problem with your aorta? Was this, and how was it diagnosed?
Yeah, it was probably about 17 or 18 years ago. I was just routine physical with my doctor, my PCP, and he knew I was heavily into running. I had just started exploring ultras after 9 or 10 marathons. I was like, okay, kind of what's next? And I started dabbling into 50 Ks, which is 31 miles. I think I was training for a 50 miler, my first one. And in the office, I was having consistently high blood pressure readings. And I remember him very, very clearly. He said, you're a runner. Pardon me, you're a runner. You follow a vegetarian diet. You really shouldn't have high blood pressure. So we did an echocardiogram. And I remember this still to this day. The nurse doing that looked at me a few minutes into it and said, have you ever had one of these before? I'm like, no, not thinking twice about it. And that's when they discovered the aneurysm and the bicuspid aortic valve was them. And I remember the call from the doctor the afternoon from the cardiologist, and it was a bit of a shattering experience. And so that was probably 2007, 2008. We put the brakes on running for a while. We started monitoring heart rate and blood pressure. Pardon me. And there was a couple years there where there wasn't more than doing a few 5Ks a year. But the good news was over time, as at least for me, every year I'd go and get the aneurysm measured. It was very steady and consistent from year to year. It never grew.
What was it? What was the size, Michael, originally?
It was between, depending on the accuracy of the test, it was between 4.3 and 4.4, I think was the range. So right where you were, Jack, when you dissected.
Right.
But I had known, they're like, when it gets to around 5, we'll have a conversation, is what we landed on.
And
so
you also
over the
knew
years,
you had a bicuspid valve.
yeah,
And we have many aortic athletes in watch and wait with just the bicuspid valve who may not even have an aneurysm, and those can develop their own issues over time.
Yeah. So we watched both very carefully, and as the years progressed and as I continued my running, nothing bad happened, nothing worse happened. So we, between my doctor and my PCP, got comfortable with me going back into long distance running, and did that for a good 10 years. Everything from 24-hour races to marathons to 100-mile races. But it was in 2022. I had just finished a 50-miler race in Antelope Canyon out west. I had my annual cardiologist visit a month or so after that, and at that point, the reading came back right around 5 for the aneurysm. And I remember, my wife and I, we met with the doctor and with the surgeon, and kind of gave us the option, like, do you want to do this now? You want to wait a bit? And knowing I was still young and eager to get back on the road and back to my running, we chose to do the surgery. So it was a very successful surgery.
So the gap again was how many years from the diagnosis to that surgery?
It was probably a good 15 years.
Okay.
Good for you. That's good to hear.
Yeah.
And were you taking meds? You're taking blood pressure medicine? What did the blood pressure go down?
Yeah, I was on blood pressure meds. Yeah, I was on blood pressure meds from the initial diagnosis, and then cholesterol meds as well. So high cholesterol runs in the family, unfortunately. So, yep, those are my 2 meds.
And did you have any sense of what your blood pressure was like while you were running? Like, did you do an exercise stress test or any of that kind of thing?
I don't remember that. I never did a formal stress test. We did like a 24-hour blood pressure monitor test early on. You have the thing strapped to your arm the whole time. You kind of carry the thing. But I didn't do any exercise during that. The closest I actually had, Jack, was what you and I swapped messages about during the 6-day race. Was I went to the medic tent at one point and was like, just out of curiosity, if you could take my blood pressure. So it was 150 over 80, on day 3 of a 6-day race. So it's gonna be a little high then. But I never really did it during the thing. We did after surgery. I did do cardio rehab, so there was plenty of time on the treadmills, all plugged into things, and there wasn't anything usually high about the blood pressure with there. So
Carmen, what's your blood pressure when you run? Do you have any idea?
I don't. I can't recall. I know I've taken it and I just can't recall. It probably was something like that though when you're active, but then the important part is that it rebounds very quickly when you're done. And I do recall, it would come back down to normal within, a minute or two of, back down to like the 120 area. So that's one of the key things that I was told by physicians, that as long as it rebounds like that and it doesn't stay elevated once you've slowed down.
Yeah. And I'm sure like a lot of folks watching here or other aortic athletes, for many years, I was told I couldn't lift heavy things. I couldn't do upper body workouts. Those sudden spikes in blood pressure is a contributing risk factor to the dissection. So I always had to be aware of that.
So you maintained though some kind of working out in that watch and wait period and just lower distance running still though.
I mean, yeah, it was it's probably 5 or 6 years of no more than like a half marathon distance. And then at some point
testing the waters.
Yeah, and then several years after that, or several, once I did the several years of the half marathons, remember talking to my doctors, like, you know what, would you be comfortable with me stepping back into the marathon world? And he's like, okay, that was good for a couple of years. And I was like, would you be comfortable with me stepping into the ultra world again? Okay, we gradually increased that comfort level as things went on.
That's so good to hear, because I know that that sounds exactly like what I did. And I know not everybody's the same as far as the initiative to ask their physician those increases, but it is inspiring to know, for those who haven't had the time yet to really see the stability over years, that you can have restrictions in the beginning that then get lowered in time once they're seeing that your CTs look great, any stats that you're giving them on your Garmin, for your activities looking great. Yep. And like you said, taking steps along the way and just requesting step by step by step. I mean, that's how I got to the marathon too. It took me a lot longer to get there, it seemed like, after I dissected, but it's good for us to ask our physicians and be a team effort to guide us on what is going to make us have our most optimal life.
Yeah, completely agree. And I've been fortunate that the cardiologist I've been seeing, he was the one who called me 20 years ago about it. So it's been the same person all this time. Wow. So we have that shared history together. He's been wonderful. The surgeon who performed the surgery on me, so they replaced, they removed the dissection, put the Dacron sleeve on there, and then they repaired the valve. They didn't replace the valve yet, but they cleaned it and repaired it. He was phenomenal. And, he told us in that pre-operation consult that, assuming this all goes well, you should be not just back to running, but you should be healthier than you were before. And he was
Michael, we recently interviewed Dr. Patrick Vargo from Cleveland Clinic, and he said something interesting, because I dissected, and I have a medically managed dissection all the way down. So I have aortic arch and the ascending and stuff. But he said something about bicuspid. He said bicuspid, people with aneurysms who have a bicuspid valve, it tends not to go higher than the beginning of the arch. So for me, Carmen, I think you have it pretty much in the descending. I have the whole deal, but you, maybe because of your biology with the bicuspid, it tends to be more limited. And maybe I wonder if that changes how your cardiologist looks at what you're doing now.
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know. A very good question.
And I know that's always the case. A lot of times people don't like that we can't answer those things, or physicians can't really answer it, but it is a case by case basis sometimes on what, the general consensus is there for exercise guidelines to be cautious, but it's still a case by case.
Yeah.
And I think the fact that you didn't dissect, your trajectory is different than Carmen and I think. Because you have dissected. But now, did you have any family history, or was there anything else out there?
Not that we could find. I mean, I've got a little bit of family history of just some heart, more traditional heart things like high blood pressure. I mentioned the cholesterol, but no history we can find of aortic, valve, bicuspid valves, or aneurysms. Nothing we could find. So, but and as hopefully again, most people have been diagnosed with this. We had my kids tested, my siblings tested.
I was about to ask.
Yeah, and luckily everyone's clear, which was good.
Good. Well, that's awesome. So about your open heart surgery and the post-surgical period, how did you gather yourself around getting into surgery and prepping for it, your mind wrapped around it?
Yeah, it is a lot, as anyone's gone through it, to get your head wrapped around. It was a very emotional time prepping for it, but I think it was my goal was A, to come out healthy for my family, but B, to come out also healthy enough to return to running. So it was nice to have both goals in mind. And I mentioned that the 50-mile race that year, that it was my last race before surgery, that was race number 105. So my mantra became to come back and get back and run marathon number 106. That was my path to 106 was my mantra. So surgery went great. Recovery was great. I was started. Well, they have these days they have you doing short walks. Within like the day you come home from these things. It's very movement is healing. So I think it was about 2.5 months, including a couple of weeks of cardio rehab on the treadmill, where they kind of watch you and see how your readings are, before I was given the green light to run again. So and I still, that first run back was on a smooth, flat bike path about 20 minutes from our house here. It was a slow 2-mile jog, but it was one of the best runs of my life, was getting back into it from there. So that was, my surgery was at the end of May.
What year?
Run, 2022, so not that long ago. And then I think that first run back was probably July of 2022. And then I was able to run the Hartford Marathon that October. So about 4.5 months after the surgery, was my return to the long distance racing. Now
you're in a very exclusive club with our aortic athlete Brad Way, who also didn't dissect, had a large aneurysm. I don't know if you talked to Brad, maybe he's watching tonight. But Brad had been signed up for the Boston Marathon, and I think he did it 5.5 months after repair, aortic aneurysm repair. Again, friends, we are not recommending this to anybody. This is, you got to be a little crazy, like Michael. But the lesson of both Brad and Michael is they were extremely intentional. They had a history of running and endurance and ultra and whatnot, and then they eased into it little by little with cardiologists, with cardio rehab. I know Brad had a sports cardiologist who was coaching him and stuff like that. So this isn't just something you get off the couch and say, "Hey kids, let's go run an ultra."
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure. So I was doing, as most people do, tons of research before the surgery, but also tons of research, or at least whatever I can find on, returning to athletics after said surgery. And I'm pretty sure I came across Brad's story and write up somewhere. And Brad and I have connected online about things. Yeah.
So did so many people who have your kind of background, it hits them probably even harder, the restrictions that are initially given. But do you feel that period lasted very long, or, even with cardio rehab, did that just kind of help give you the confidence to, like, you're going to be okay, and then get out on your path?
Yeah. So I had a lot of confidence coming out of the surgery. And so knowing the surgery went well, and I was feeling good afterwards. The first month, for anyone who's gone through it, the first month is, your whole body's gone through pretty traumatic stuff with the surgery, so everything hurts and everything. But once you got past that first month and started feeling better, it was a very positive experience, getting back into fitness, getting back into shape. I was encouraged that after 2 months off, my body hadn't forgotten everything. It's not like you're starting from scratch. So the memory was there in the muscles and in my endurance, and I was able to pick things up pretty quickly. So the whole thing was a very positive experience. And I'm blessed with a wonderful family who's got my back on these things. They've been through the roller coaster of the good years and the bad years, and the surgery is also trauma on the family, right? As they have to go through this as part of my lives. So they've been they also helped us with the emotional part of the recovery, helping me get to where I am today.
Well,
so it was
the trauma in the family can also be doing a marathon 4 or 5 months after open heart surgery.
Yeah, I was going to say, how did they react to your desire to keep going the distance?
Yeah, so they understood. They knew even before surgery that my fitness goal was to get back into long distance running after the surgery. So they knew that. Full transparency, it doesn't make it easy sometimes, because I know it's can cause anxiety having a heart issue and then saying I'm going to go out and run for 6 days straight. It takes a lot of understanding and patience and support to support your husband in doing something like that. But they understand, and I'm very fortunate that they've got my back on my own fitness journey. And they were there. My family was there for the finish of that Hartford Marathon, number 106, and it was a very lot of tears that day on that race.
I was going to ask, it was emotional, because I know a lot of times when you're accomplishing something so great, no matter what it is that, at the level that somebody is, even if it's a 5K the first time or if it's an ultra, I mean, it's pretty emotional to be crossing the finish line, no?
Yeah, the whole day was emotional, and everything from I had done the Hartford Marathon probably 9 or 10 times, so I have a whole routine that day every year. And coming back from that surgery and picking up that routine again, everything from my parking spot I hit every year to walking up to the finish line, the start line, in the dark before the race begins, and seeing my friends doing their pacing, and having all that. How do I describe it? Knowing how blessed and fortunate I was to have the chance to toe the line at a marathon again after that surgery was, it's you're full of appreciation and gratitude for life at times like that.
Yeah,
It's
for
beautiful,
sure.
and it sure is. And I always say that when after dissection 2 years later, I did the New York Marathon. Carmen was there, and my wife Ave was at the finish line, and she gave me a big hug in Central Park and said, "No more marathons." I think it was a lot more stressful for her than for me.
Yeah, but that tells you something, right? This isn't just our journey. Our friends and family closest to us go through the same journey. Whether it's parents or spouses or kids. So and all that's part of the decision making of what we do with
Mhm.
the health we have and the time we have on this planet. And yeah, so they're definitely all a part of this whole journey.
So, Michael,
Wow.
I wanted to ask you about ultras in general and you specifically. My sense is, and I want to talk about exertion levels. So
Yeah,
in the world of sports and athletics and stuff like that, there's adrenaline junkies. And I have to say that the Ironman, a lot of people who get attracted to kind of Ironman are adrenaline junkies. It's all faster, harder, stronger, and it's all about maxing out, and because I was a middle of the pack, back of the pack guy, so my approach was the exact opposite. It was all about building just a big, low, steady base. That's
yeah.
this is before dissection, and I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about exertion levels in an ultra. What kind of I don't know, pacing, or what are you doing out there
Yeah.
in normal?
Yeah, so it is a whole different thing than running a road marathon or a 5K. 5Ks stress me out because I do feel like I need to be like on and pushing things for the whole 25 minutes or so. But for most people, including me, running an ultra is a much slower, low
Mhm.
pace, less intense affair. Um, a lot to answer your question, a lot of it depends on terrain. So if the terrain is hilly with lots of climbs or very technical, yeah, I'll be hiking up those climbs, and my heart rate can raise a bit for there. But my sweet spot I've learned is the long ultras on like the flat graded, whether it's a bike path or rail trail, and on those kind of things, I've found I can hit a pretty light jog, kind of a very smooth rhythm, or my heart rate's, and you and I were texting about this, Jack, at the 6 day. My heart rate's 120, 125, which is I think fairly low in the grand scheme of things. And just kind of keep going on that, not going very fast, maybe 11, 12-minute pace, taking some walking breaks. That's my sweet spot. I can do that for days.
Oh. Now, is that any different from prior with your previous ultra marathons? Like after your surgery, are you still doing like you're just back to the exact same kind of routine and pace, or is it any different at all?
Probably the pace and the running method is the same, Carmen. What's different though is probably in the past year I've been pushing into longer distances and longer time races. So kind of same technique, same approach, just bigger ultras, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Probably 15, 20 years ago, I read an article about this running technique called chi running. And there's lots of variations, like I think pose is another version of, but the idea is, running very relaxed, keeping a good posture, but leaning forward to let gravity pull you forward, envisioning each step you take not as like a forceful muscle driven push off, but you're simply catching yourself falling lightly every step. I think there's some good science to that, and it's helped me find just an easy gait, easy rhythm, something I can sustain for hours and hours on end without really, you know, putting a lot of muscle fatigue on my muscles, if that makes sense. So chi running, if you want to look that up.
I do loping like a, you know, like a wolf or something. I have much poorer form than that, than being intentional about leaning forward. So you're a pioneer, not just for the aortic community. I mean, the number of ultra runners who even contemplate doing a 6-day race is you're, as someone once said, a subset of a subset of a subset of ultra runners, aren't you?
Probably, yeah, probably. So the 6-day, I had read about this race early on, 25 years ago, when I was first branching into ultras, and my reaction back then was, wow. So this was called Across the Years, was the name of the race. It's in Arizona, and it starts in December of one year and finishes in January of the next year. And I thought that'd be really cool to run a race that actually spans 2 calendar years. Circumstances just allowed itself this year, where in early December, I realized I had a chance to run the race. So with, I talked to my family, and with everyone's permission, I signed up for that. Had no idea what to do. I'd never gone more than, I think 33 hours was the longest I'd been on my feet for another event prior to that. So it was, it was 6 days. It was in a sports complex in Peoria, Arizona. So it's not out in the middle of the desert, not out in the woods. It's a very controlled, half kind of dirt road, half paved environment around a bunch of baseball stadiums. Tons of good food, tons of water, real bathrooms. They make it really easy for you. 1.4 mile loop was the course, and you start on a Saturday morning and it finished up on a Friday morning. And,
so you just run a 1 mile loop like a zillion times.
1.4 mile loop. I think it was like 279 times or so was what the math worked out to. Yeah, and I had a hotel half a mile down the road. I'd go there usually once a night to shower, just to lie my back for a bit and recover, and then a few hours later get out of bed and start the whole thing over again.
Wait. So the hotel was half a mile away, and you walked there, right? Did you get to count the distance to the hotel? Wait, you can't even count the mile that you walked back and forth to your hotel?
Sadly, no. Sadly, no.
What?
Yeah, sadly, no. It was I learned a lot from this one, and I think if the next time I do one of these, I learn lessons around time management and how to take more thoughtful breaks on things. But I'm still amazed how good I felt for most of it. Again, my heart rate was nice and steady throughout the whole thing. Nothing too high. Had lots of calories, good nutrition. I was able to run probably 80% of the 377 miles over the course of the 6 days, and it's amazing what a couple of hours off your feet, even if it's not sleeping, just reclining on your back off your feet, how much that can help you recover and allow you to go another 50 or 60 miles the next day. Things. Yeah, a lot of things conspired to help this come together well, and I was still trained from a couple of late fall races, and it all just worked out really well.
How do you do without sleep? So I mean, I would be like it's like being in a trench in World War I, where you're just sleep deprived for a week. Like, how do you get up to run without having slept?
I don't know, other than I just did it. I think I figured out I slept about 5 hours, like truly slept about 5 hours from the Saturday to Friday. Now I probably rested with my eyes closed, either in the hotel bed or in the cot at the race, probably 13 or 14 hours. So I wasn't on my feet moving, 22 hours a day. But yeah, about 5 hours of sleep. And I know this is going to sound corny. Some of it is that I just love this stuff so much, and that really does boost your energy. It's not a chore. It's not something I'm plowing through or forcing myself through. Just that the sustained positive emotion of the whole thing actually can carry you a long way.
Mhm.
That, and I don't do caffeine at home. I only save Coca-Cola and real coffee for races like this. So that also, caffeine also helps.
Wow. Well, so then afterwards, how is the recovery and how are you feeling when you finished?
So the 6th day was, I had never, so never having done that before, I wasn't sure what to expect. One of my best running day was actually the last couple of days, believe it or not. But when I was done, after a really good shower at the hotel, I was really stiff, as you can imagine, really sore after all that. Probably the biggest difference was, I do blister pretty easily, but my feet were really achy, like within the feet, the muscles and the tendons, not just surface blisters, but my feet were deeply sore from inside from 6 days of that. I took 3 days off completely. A little bit of walking around the house, no jogging, no treadmill, no bike, just 3 days off completely. The week I got back, I was taking naps every day. I was recovering from my sleep. I was eating a ton. I was trying to rebuild the calories I'd expended and wasn't able to keep up with that. So it was a lot of eating, a lot of sleeping. And I think about day 4, I came back and just did a short jog after that.
Gosh.
And so it was probably
I
good
couldn't even think about doing that.
it was probably about 2 weeks or so, and I felt normal. And my knee is a little twingy still. My right knee is a little twingy now.
So
But
your
yeah,
body just must be a machine because there's some friends of mine that are runners that I'm just like, they never have any joint pain. I have to like KT tape up everywhere and be fully prepped. And there are some people who are just, you're made for it, you know?
yeah. If that's the case, then I'm lucky. Then yeah, no major injuries, no long term sustained things. It was yeah. Again, it was a lot of things came together to make that just a very successful event for me. And
And
yeah,
what about
I
this?
was in the middle.
What about the social side? Are you lonely out there? Are you,
Yeah,
I mean, and by the way, you and I were texting occasionally,
yeah.
and I was like, oh my God, I just sent like a Michael, good luck, I'm with you, the whole deal. And then I got a text from Michael during the ultra. I'm like, that's ultra karma. It's like, it's chill. It's like, yeah, we can do
It was very chill. And uh, to answer your question, on this loop, this 1.4-mile loop, there was a halfway point timing mat. So my routine was I would walk the first 3 minutes of the start finish, and then run into the timing mat, the halfway point, and then walk the next 3 minutes after the halfway point, and then pick up running again. So I always had two walking breaks within each loop, and I'm frequently checking my phone. I was messaging family. I had a message group of friends going just on updates. So I was pretty easy to be connected, Jack, throughout the thing. Again, it's not like a 5K where you're hunkered down, sprinting your butt off. It's a very people are chill. People are walking with the pancake in one hand and Coca-Cola in the other hand and chatting with each other. Yeah, it was when you have 6 days to go at this and you have plenty of time to check your phone. And I don't get bored. That's probably the biggest question most had asked me after this was, how do you keep yourself occupied? I'm a pretty strong introvert, and you give me my earbuds, my music, and my Spotify, and my audiobooks occasionally. I can go for days on my own and just enjoy the peace and the quiet and just hit the zone.
Well, I
So
appreciate that we used to say no thinking allowed,
yeah,
because if you start thinking, you go to a bad place.
yeah.
So better just just be present. It's like a meditation or something.
Yeah, it's an interesting mix of body listening and being here now, but also with just the music in the background, and being in the nice warm sun and people around you sharing the same emotional adventure you are, having the same ups and downs. Yeah, it's a very Zen isn't the right word, but it's a very spiritual experience in some ways. And Jack, I mentioned this to you, the Don't Quit Adapt shirt. I wore this, gosh, probably 3 days in a row. It got really smelly. The Don't Quit Adapt. I had so many people as they were passing me or I was passing, they said this was the best motto on any shirt they saw that day.
Well, just for people who are
miles.
watching, we have swag. This is Aortic Athletes swag with our symbol on the front, and on the back it says our motto: "Don't quit, adapt." What does it mean? What did it mean to people during a 6-day ultra?
I mean, over 6 days, anything can happen, right? You can get blisters, you can have nutrition, GI issues, you can be exhausted from sleep, you can have gear that goes wrong, and I think people saw that as, you know what, there's so many excuses to stop running. There's so many excuses to drop out. No one's going to think worse of me if I stopped right now and head back to my hotel room. But people said, you know what, they're not going to quit. They're just going to adjust their strategy, go get off their feet for an hour, come back out and see how they feel. It was, yeah, people really, the notion of adjusting your approach and seeing what happens next, but not stopping, it really resonated with people. So it was really encouraging hearing that.
Wow. You're inspiring people here with your story, and then they're on the course while you were doing it too.
Yeah. I'm messaging Jack. Jack, I had another comment in the shirt. Jack, another person likes the shirt.
Well, Joshua, do we have any folks in the audience who have a question?
Well, we definitely have some folks in the audience. Let me switch over and take a look at chat here for a second. Right out of the gate, let's say hello to Molly and Thomas and John Brenny. So Molly says, "Hi, I'm Molly, and I am a dissection survivor, and I'm an aortic athlete." Right, and she says, "I love that motto." She also said, "I just bought a T-shirt with the logo, Don't Quit, Adapt." Right?
Yeah, we're very proudly, Molly.
Yeah.
Good.
Including right after you dissect and you take those first steps, walking out of the chair. You know, I remember walking around the interior walls of my house after I dissected, and here we are later. Yeah.
Step by step, like you said.
Step by step.
Step by step. And so Molly says, "Wow, 127. How did you feel during/after that first 2-mile run?"
Very elated was the best way I can think of it. It was slow. It hurt, but to be out there doing what I love to do so much, and I just remember I had this crazy grin on my face. I think I texted a selfie to my family in the middle of it. I know I posted on Facebook about it. It was a very, in some ways, felt like I had come full circle, and that was when I knew I can get back into the running for certain. So it was a very positive experience having that 2-mile run back after the surgery.
That's a wonderful answer. It's exactly what she wants to hear. Velda says, "Ultra cool."
Thanks, Velda.
And that catches up with the chat. I have a question for you. One of the things that I hear inside of the support groups has to do with changing out your medications. Did you have any trouble with medication updates and changes?
No. Let me think. The only medication change over the years has been, so I mentioned I was on the high blood. I think it was on Lipitor Metropolol. I think for the high blood pressure for a while. Yeah, I think a lot of people are on that one. A few months, probably about 6 months after, probably about a year after the surgery, my blood pressure returned actually quite normal. So I've been off that one for a little over a year now, and I'm only on the atorvastatin for cholesterol now. So that was the only major medication change I think over the 20 years.
And,
wow, that's very, Michael. I think a lot of us experience needing to tweak our meds over time. Carmen, I don't know about you, but it's interesting that you had such a long period pre-surgery where you were just on the exact same dosage and it was doing its job. I found need to go up with this, add this, take that out. Too much of that, has been a little bit of an art. What do you think, Carmen?
Yeah, I agree. There was, a period where when I started getting more active again, and of course my blood pressure is coming down a bit again, and then the medications were basically plummeting my blood pressure. So then I would just have bouts of like almost passing out levels of blood pressure readings, and the fatigue was just so bad. So there was bouts of talking to the doctor of like, okay, I'm not functional. We need to back off some half a dose or whatever it was, and I know a lot of people do that too, not just with adjusting the dosage like that, but just like it's just not a good fit for them. Metoprolol was just too much, so they might change to carvedilol or something else. So I do know that, yeah, there's a lot of people who generally have to just figure it out over time, see what fits.
All right, and that catches us up with chat.
Great. Michael, what would you say to your younger self, just diagnosed with bicuspid disease 20 years ago? What would you say to be on the lookout for? What might be the same? What might be different?
Interesting. I would say I would advise him to be patient, because there were in the years where I wasn't able to run as far as I could, I was impatient with it. And even then I knew that even being able to do a 5K or 10K was more than some people could do. So I was trying to be appreciative of that and recognize that. I'd tell him to be patient. But I also would tell him to, don't give up hope, and stay close to your doctors, and make sure they're a part of the journey, and make sure your family remains part of the journey. And by part of the journey, I mean make sure you're all making decisions together and people are comfortable with the decisions and risks. Other than that, I wouldn't do much else different to my younger self.
Because we have just this week we've had people who've been diagnosed with bicuspid and an aneurysm who are going to be watching this, and we have people who have just dissected in the last month, who've joined our group recently, who are saying, "How the heck?" Like, we're going to see this video, and so I think you are a great example of you're like the Mount Everest that's out there. You are. I don't know that any of us are going to aspire to do what you've done. Yeah. Honestly, you're unique, but you set a high standard. You set a little light out there. What do you think, Carmen?
Yeah, I agree. And what I'm curious though is, what is your next? Do you have a next goal after this?
Yeah,
I have Mount Everest.
No, I've no desire to do Mount Everest. That one's no desire to do that one. I have a couple of big races this year. So I've got a 3-day race coming up in New Jersey in April. And an angle on that one is I've submitted a request to the Guinness Book of World Records to try to form a category for most miles covered in a foot race post open heart surgery. I'm waiting to hear back from them. It takes a long time. And I've identified that race as the race to do it. So we'll see if that comes to fruition. And then I have probably the big adventure this year, though, is in June. There's a 200-mile race around Lake Tahoe in California called the Tahoe 200. And that's the big one I've just started training for this past week. Those are the two big goals this year.
So does that one have a lot of elevation gain?
Yeah,
I'm assuming.
Yeah, that's not the happy 1.4 mile loop track. That is, I think it's like basically 100 miles around the Tahoe Rim Trail, at between 8, 9, 10,000 feet elevation, and then circle back and come back to the start. I think it's a 4-day, 8-hour cutoff, something like 30,000 something feet of elevation games. Yes, that'll be a whole different adventure than the 6 days in Arizona. But I'm looking forward to that one.
Well, you'll have to keep us posted. That sounds really awesome. I'm glad that you have something else that you can just continue on your athletic journey.
Yeah, thank you. I'm looking forward to it.
And as we switch to, at the Aortic Athlete, a lot of the problem that our community has is there are no clinical studies supporting, the activity levels that maybe people aspire to. And so you truly are a pioneer. I was wondering if you When are you going to see your cardiologist next? You sort of have some news to share with her or him.
I actually met with him just a couple of weeks ago. As my regular scheduled annual was just a couple of weeks after my 6 days. So yeah, he was proud of that. And the good news was my echo and my EKG are all still perfectly normal after running six days. So.
All right. Well, that's critical scientific. That's critical data.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
Well, all right, Joshua, if we don't have any other questions, I think we're going to wrap it up here.
Okay. One last bit of feedback here. Molly says, did you feel a bit ironic as you took your heart medicine while running an ultra? You are impressive.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, the thought crossed my mind. Yeah, as I'm popping, as my iPhone alarm is going off at 7 in the morning. I'm already 5 hours into the morning's run, and I'm popping my medicines, and yeah, it was a bit ironic, but it's also also a good feeling knowing that the medicine is there to help. Surrounded by friends and family there to see me through. Yeah, it was a bit ironic, but it was mostly a good feeling.
That's
right,
excellent.
Carmen, you want to take us out?
Yeah, well, I was just going to say thank you so much, Michael, for joining us and sharing your story, because that's just, I'm sure everybody's just in awe of what you have done. So thank you for sharing. If you're new here, again, just thank you for coming. Hopefully you can join our group, Aortic Athletes, and again, check out Aortic Hope. I'm not sure what our next video will be, an inspiring story or another doctor expert, but join us the next time. We'll see you then.